Monday, everybody. So today I'm going to be talking to you about dairy. Dairy is one of those areas that when you think about going without cheese or something even like maybe cream or butter, it could be one of those things that you think I would never be able to do. So I'm going to give you some alternatives to dairy, but what I'm going to be talking to you about first is why is dairy something that you may want to consider looking for an alternative for. What may be some of the symptoms that you're experiencing if dairy is a problem for you, and then I'll share with you some alternatives that you can consider for dairy. And when I'm talking about dairy, I am talking specifically about cow's milk. So why might you consider some alternatives? Well, actually humans are the only mammals that as adults are still consuming dairy. If you look at all mammals, all species, all animals that are part of the planet, I always like to remind everyone that we are still, mammals are part of this planet, but we are the only ones that are still consuming dairy, cows or milk specifically, as an adult. All other mammals stop drinking milk at infancy. So most of us no longer have the enzyme that's needed to break down the proteins, lactose, that we find inside dairy. So there's an enzyme lactase that's needed to help break down these sugar proteins that are found. And you'll find that there are some small populations that that still have this enzyme, but actually over 70% of the population no longer have the enzyme required to break down the proteins inside milk. So 70%. It's a very likely chance that you are lactose intolerant. Also, when we look at commercial dairy, unfortunately, the way that we meet the demands of dairy isn't necessarily the best in terms of what it does to the animals. So when you're trying to keep dairy cows consuming or being able to produce so much milk to be able to meet demands, these cows are not only fed hormones, because obviously cows, same as humans, would only produce milk if they are pregnant and for their infants. So to continue that production of the amount of milk that's required, these cows are fed a large amount of hormones. And because these cows are fed a lot of hormones, they do fall sick. And when you're trying to take milk from cows that are under this amount of hormones and also constantly being required to produce such large quantities, then when you're producing this milk, that inside that milk, all the pus, all the hormones, everything goes inside the milk that you're consuming from commercial milk. So I don't know about you, but that's a good reason for me. I don't want to be drinking all of that crap that's going inside the milk. That's a good enough reason for me not to want to drink milk, commercial milk, even if I wasn't lactose intolerant. So I am as well. I'm that 70% of the population that's lactose intolerant. So what are some of the symptoms that you might experience if you're lactose intolerant? So for most people it's diarrhea, it could be bloating, it could be gas, brain fog as well. So everybody's different, right? I always teach you that one diet doesn't fit all. So everybody has different symptoms. And so what I hear when I speak to a lot of people that say, oh, actually I think I'm fine with dairy. When I say to them, well, have you ever removed dairy from your diet? Have you ever gone long periods of time without any cow's milk? Most people say no to that I ask, that think that they're not lactose intolerant. But if you haven't gone long period of time without it, at least 2 weeks without it, then you're not necessarily going to know that some of the symptoms, some of the ailments that you may have are actually attributed to the fact that you're lactose intolerant. So I would really encourage you to remove it for a period of time, minimum really of a week, but ideally 2 weeks, to see if any of these symptoms that you may have been experiencing are actually caused by the dairy. So these are some of the symptoms. The other thing to look out for is actually there are regions in the world where people actually originated from dairy farmers. So when you think of maybe the 30% of the population that still have the enzyme required to break down lactose, think of places that actually milk and dairy were in abundance. So when you think of cheese, I don't know about you, but I always think, when I think of cheese, I think of places like France, or in England I think of places like Devon and Cornwall. And then also, you know, when I'm thinking of milk and cows, I also think of places like India. Well, it's no surprise that a lot of these places, their ancestors were dairy farmers. So unlike somewhere like Asia, like somewhere like China, where, you know, most Asians are like 90% lactose intolerant, when I look at where their ancestry is from, they're from grain farmers and not dairy farmers. So it's no surprise that they are actually more likely to be lactose intolerant. So thinking about the geographical locations of where, you know, dairy farms were is a good indication for you as to, you know, if your ancestors were from those areas, whether it's likely that you would be lactose intolerant or not. So what are the alternatives? So you now understand why it's not a good reason to be consuming dairy. You understand a little bit about the symptoms that you may be experiencing. So what are your alternatives? Well, I think that soy milk is a great alternative for Asians because soybean grows in abundance here. But my concern about soybean is it's one of the most genetically modified plants alongside wheat. So if you are buying soy milk, I would really look out for a brand that is organic, so it's not GMO soy crop, and also look out for any hidden sugars that can be in these cartons. Because what I've found about living in Asia is a lot of the soy milk that's in the supermarkets are stuffed with lots of sugar, as well as they're not organic, genetically modified soybeans. So soybeans could be a great option, especially for Asians. Another alternative is coconut milk. And again, I think especially tropical countries do very well, if your ancestors are from tropical countries, do very well on coconut milk. So I've got a lot of Caribbean and Costa Rican history in my ancestry, so I do very well with coconut milk as my alternative to cow's milk. And then another alternative, a third one would be nut milks. So the most common one that I generally see is almond milk, but cashew milk makes for a great creamy nut milk as well. But nut milk is the most easiest thing to make. If you need a recipe for nut milks, I do have a recipe for almond milk on my website, so just check out 𝐓𝐫𝐿𝐿𝐵. But yes, you just soak the nuts for the quantity that they need. Each nut is different, but something like almonds require around 8 hours of soaking, so I just do it overnight, whereas cashews are a lot softer, so they only need like 3 to 4 hours soaking. You soak them in water overnight, you then drain them, and you then mix the nuts that you need with the water quantity that you need. You blend it, and then you strain off the meal, and you're left with nut milk. So nut milks are so quick and so easy, and they're, you know, the third alternative that I would say. So soy milk, coconut milk, and nut milks are great alternatives that are very easily available to cow's milk. So I hope that I've encouraged you to consider removing cow's milk out of your diet and trying to move towards more of a plant-based alternative that could be really something that could really help you in achieving your health goals. As you know, I do share more tips like this through my newsletter. So the best way to do that, to sign up for my newsletter, is to head over to 𝐓𝐿𝐵 and you can sign up there for my newsletter, where I'll share lots more, you know, tips that can help you like this to achieve your health goals and generally to just improve your health. So have a great Sunday. Thanks, guys.